We're going to be talking about ransomware and the latest attacks that we've been seeing in the media. So let us first introduce ourselves. Adam, why don't you go first?
Okay, I'm Adam Bell. I'm the president of Sublime Computer Services. We're located in Nashville, Tennessee. We focus on the medical, legal, technology companies, and we provide IT support and service for our clients throughout Middle Tennessee. We do not go to North Carolina.
That's because that's where I come in. My name is Tim Richter with Arcor, and we are a managed service provider providing IT support to small and mid-sized businesses in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, and Greensboro areas of North Carolina. I do not do support in Tennessee, although I have been known to show up there and talk with Adam and converse about marketing and IT.
Apparently, those cost more and more because it's more a rarity than it used to be.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But we're here to talk about ransomware. So, Adam, why don't you tell us a little bit about what actually is ransomware, so that we can define it as what's different about that versus other types of malware.
Okay, well, ransomware is, for lack of a better term, it is a virus, meaning your computer is being forced to run a program or made to run a program that you don't want it to run, and it's running against your will. It is different in that it is taking your files and encrypting them. That's a very short layman's answer, but what that means when I say your files are encrypted, that means that it generates a locking code on those files that you cannot unlock them. There's nothing you can do to open up those files. That's not 100% true. There are ways to decrypt files, but the amount of time it takes to decrypt them is so long that it's not within your lifespan, so it's not worth it. So now you have an encrypted file, and the ransomware is that some very nice person has encrypted your files, and they are now offering to decrypt your files for you for a fee, and hence the ransomware. They are holding your files ransom, and they want you to pay them money to release those files. It's not as simple as that, and it's not as black and white as that. Sometimes they don't give you the files. Sometimes they may not even be able to decrypt their own files, and sometimes you don't get anything for the money.
Have you ever dealt with either customers or new people who have called you that have had a ransomware attack?
I've had existing clients get a ransom attack, and their vulnerability came in via email, and the user ran the file, and they shouldn't have run it. And what they did is they encrypted all of their computer, and they encrypted all of the network drives that they had access. And it was a ransomware. They wanted they wanted money to get it back. Fortunately, we didn't pay any money. They lost I don't know, maybe 8 hours of. Well, it was morning, so the backups happened like at 6. So they lost some data, but they didn't lose everything that they could have lost, and we didn't pay any ransom.
Exactly.
So we were fortunate with the backups.
Yeah, I had one customer who get it, and they actually paid the ransom, and they got about 95% of their things back. But I'll tell you that it was a constant pestering to the email address that was provided before they finally released the decryption key, and then it didn't decrypt everything. The other one was not a customer, it was a person who had gotten hit, and their company called us, and they had backups from the night before, and again we worked with them, and they weren't complete backups, and they weren't tested backups, so some of it came back, some of it didn't, but they weren't willing to pay, which is usually a good thing because a lot of people they pay and they never hear from them again.
Yeah, well, I mean, since you brought up paying is one of the things I wanted to chat about. Is what do you think? Do you think people should pay?
Oh boy, oh boy, that's a loaded question. It really is. Um, it depends if they have a way to recover it or not.
Mm-hmm.
If you have good backups and you have, if you're a business that has a managed service provider that provides, a good backup service, and you have the ability to recover in a fairly quick amount of time, or you're a home user and you use a backup service that, again, you can recover, then to me it's worth it to not pay.
Mm-hmm.
But let's use the second company, the one that actually hadn't worked with us in the past. Their information was on an electronic medical record system, and their main database got hit, and
Yeah.
all of their attached documents got hit. Now they didn't pay, but and we were able to recover their SQL database, and they recovered most of their scanned documents.
Yeah.
And so they didn't really have to recover all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, they lost about a week's worth of documents, and they were able to slowly get those through other sources like lab results, through the local lab companies and stuff, and it just took time to recover all of it. But let's say they didn't have it. They've got regulatory requirements that they have to keep the information.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have been forced to at least try to pay. But by the time it hits 20 computers and it has $400 or $500 per, we're talking that that's $1,000 right there. And then it's Bitcoin. So how many people have a Bitcoin account that has $1,000 or has $1,000 in it? By the time you get down the path, because every 12 to 24 hours is doubling,
Mm-hmm.
you might have a $10, $20, even $50,000 amount that you have to pay, and most people won't pay that. How about you?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, like you said, it is a loaded question, and it's a very difficult one to say. No, nobody should ever pay the ransom.
Yeah.
Kind of like in real terrorism. The United States stance is we don't negotiate with terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
They take the negotiation off the table every single time,
Mm-hmm.
so that they know that they can't ever get what they want because they won't negotiate.
Yes.
So it's a
Mm-hmm.
it's a lose-lose. They lose, and
Mm-hmm.
whoever's being held ransom obviously loses.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a lose-lose-lose, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
So they make it where there are no winners. Well, it's difficult for all the businesses around the United States and home users to say, no, we will never pay the ransom. No matter how much data we're going to lose, we're never going to pay it. So it makes it a ripe field for picking, because the volume of people are going to have to pay because they don't do things to protect their systems the best that they could.
Yeah, exactly. If your systems are protected, it's going to it's the best not to pay it. So yeah. But let's go into a couple of a couple of infections that have occurred. I mean, we've got Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital out in California is one of the biggest that were hit last year. They ended up paying for the ransom because it was just an issue of convenience. But still, they were 7 days where essentially they didn't know what patients were there, what medications they were getting, any of that. I mean, it really struck home. I mean, this newest virus, Petya, hit the Heritage Hospital Group up in Pennsylvania, and they had, they came out and said that they were hit, but they didn't really talk about, what patient functions were affected, but still, the pictures you see on the internet of just people standing there and just rows and rows of computers having the message up on the screen.
Yeah.
I mean, from within a legal office when you have to walk into a courtroom the next day, or if you're in a medical office that you're sitting there waiting to see what patients come in. It
Mm-hmm.
reminds me back of the day where we had a local physician's office who called us up, and they were, wasn't a customer. This was like 15 years ago. They called us up and they said, our system went down. We'd like you, you were recommended to come to us to recover it. We went over there and the backup was running. The tape was spitting out every night. But what they didn't realize is it wasn't backing up to the tape. It was just spitting it out.
Yeah.
And
Backup
so,
failure.
exactly. And they were gone through every single tape multiple times in their rotation. So they had no data for the next 6 months. They didn't know who was walking in the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, luckily that was a day before electronic medical records, so we didn't have to deal with charts being on there and things like that. This was just their appointment calendar and contact information. But again, they lost their contact information for every single patient. They had to go through the charts and type it in. Once the software was reinstalled on their server, they had to type that in, and they went through every single one of their thousands of charts to get that contact information back in and to guesstimate when the person needed to come in for an appointment.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me back of those days.
Yeah. Well, and it becomes a business decision.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
For a large corporation, $3,000 is like $3,000. How much am I losing each hour of this?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I live in Durham County in North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, and a particular strain of ransomware hit the Durham County building not once but twice last year. And they have multiple layers of protection and so forth, so it was very localized and minimized, and they didn't pay. They went off of good backups because, I mean, their IT manager, their IT director is right on the ball on these things, but I mean, it hit close to home.
Mm-hmm.
It does. Love it or hate it, NASCAR. I mean, the Levine Racing family, one of their laptops that actually kept track of the characteristics, I guess. I mean, it's on the internet. The characteristics of the race car got hit, and they said it could have cost them millions, and it could have cost them their place in one of the upcoming races, without that data. And that just, I guess, what it says to me is good backups are necessary.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you think of the new virus, this Petya, or should I say non-Petya?
Non-Petya. Well, it's definitely tricky. I will admit that I don't understand everything that it does.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things. It's like, how NASCAR is described, it gets them the results of 212 miles an hour. So you're like,
Exactly.
I can understand the results. I don't understand the code.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely tricky.
I heard one of the interesting things about this particular virus is it's not Petya. Petya was something that, just so the public knows, Petya was something that was released previously, and it just uses some of the same code, and some of the same code is WannaCry, the ransomware that was released a little bit ago. But the unique thing about this is two things. One is it's outside of Windows. So you may get it, and it's mainly distributed through attachments to emails, and it runs. And then what happens is your system reboots in anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour from the time that it's infected. And what happens is it overwrites what's called the master boot record, which is the record that determines what starts your computer. It creates its own little thing that brings up a ransom page. But at the same time, rather than encrypting your files, it encrypts the table that keeps track of your files. So it makes your files completely unreadable. There's no way for this master file record to do anything. Essentially, what it does is it forces you to do a backup restore from of the whole drive. It's not a, oh, I'm going to restore just this group of data files or just this group of other files.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's killing the bootloader.
exactly.
Well, that's completely conjecture. I wonder if the bootloader could be destroyed and recreated if you knew how to do that. Because you can do that. I mean, if you lose the MBR, you can recreate it if they don't actually encrypt it, if they only encrypt the MBR.
Yeah, well, they don't encrypt the MBR. They encrypt the master file table.
Yeah.
So all they do is change the MBR. So even if you got the MBR to not boot up, because the master boot record, instead of going into Windows, it displays the ransom message. So even if you got it to start going into Windows, it would not understand the files anymore, because the table that keeps track of the files are encrypted. So I mean, that's just game over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it brings me back to the days of Tron. There's been a lot of talk of whether this was state sponsored because it hit Ukraine the hardest, and then it just released from there. I mean, locally, Merck, Mondelez, the makers of Oreos, and I'm going to say right now, you ransomware people, you're on my hot list for taking down Oreos. Okay.
Yeah, don't mess with the Oreos.
Exactly. So I mean, it's a really interesting it's a really interesting thought of the fact that it started out in one area, and I'm going to bring something up at this point. I saw two things. One is I saw on WannaCry, the latest ransomware virus in May. The way that they stopped it essentially is there was something built into it called a kill switch. I mean, did you read about that at all, or?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, what happened is inside the code there was a nonsensical website, a domain that essentially was a stopper. What it did is it checked for that domain. If the domain was registered, it stopped itself before it even encrypted, before it did anything else. And one guy found that out and essentially stopped WannaCry, or at least the original variant of it. They stopped it with $10 and some odd cents of registering a domain with GoDaddy.
How did they figure that out?
I have no idea. Yeah.
That sounds like an inside job.
But my concern is that people, there's going to be a movie out there that very soon, I'm sure, that talks about a big virus ransomware, and it's stopped in its tracks with a kill switch, and that type of thing. And what it's going to do is people are going to get the wrong idea. In fact, I was sent an article, I think it was off of CNN's website, where this guy in Russia with another type of ransomware found that if a file existed on your computer, that it stopped this particular variant of ransomware. And it was just published just the other day. And unfortunately, the title was "Programmer Found a Way to Stop Ransomware." So people are going to start to believe that that there are ways of stopping it, like the Petya one. There was no way of stopping it. I mean, if people now it grabbed a hold of systems that didn't have proper patching, obviously, for Windows updates, but my real concern of it is that people are going to get the wrong idea. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, life is like TV, right?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people think that.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's no way to stop it. It's kind of like like antivirus. You know, I don't know how many times I've had my clients say, how could I possibly get a virus? I've got antivirus software. Well, this one program has to stop every single program that the rest of the world has ever conceived to try to harm it. It's a very daunting task.
Yes.
So it's really big. I mean, it's a big false sense of security.
I had a doctor who actually came up to me, you know, Duke University is really big here, and the Duke University Medical Center, obviously, and he was talking to someone in IT, and they said that a tremendous amount of their resources are just fending off attacks. You know, I'm not gonna give publicly what the percentage was, but that there was a tremendously large percentage of their resources in IT that was just designed to fend off attacks and recover from attacks. And what that's doing is that's taking away from the general everyday support that the doctors and the and the nursing staff and in the end the patients get.
Yeah. Have you? Well, it's computer. Have you ever seen Mr. Robot?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's a series completely based around hackers, and there's a ransomware that they do to take over the banks. Of course, it's completely fictional, but it's closer to true than it's closer to what we're realizing right now.
Exactly.
Is there fiction? So
let's talk a little bit about the steps that we can take to protect ourselves.
Okay.
Or protect our businesses.
Yeah, and that's really the most important thing, you know, because the virus, like the antivirus, the virus is going to change. The methods are going to change. You know, like right now, I've switched my antivirus provider, and I believe that they're the best provider currently.
Yeah.
What are they going to be 12 months from now? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I switched mine 12 months ago, and I'm out there looking to see what I want to do. But I will say that a good antivirus, anti-malware, you know, sometimes they're going to be separate packages, especially for home users. They're usually going to be separate packages. There's not one-stop shop for everything, because just like you said, you know, how many can they protect against? Because there are hundreds, if not thousands, that are of variants of malwares that are coming out. You know, you talk about the WannaCry in May. I want to say the latest I saw where there were 12 different variants just within days of the original one coming out, because you know, people would say, oh, you know, Kaspersky found it, or you know, Symantec, Norton Antivirus found it. So what they do, they came out with a variant for it. So one of the important things, though, is to look for something that not only does a search for known, they call them strings, which are identifiers of files and infections, but also to find one that does heuristic scanning, which is for virus or malware-like activity. And I'm sure that's the one that we have, that we use for our customers, definitely has that. And I know that the one that you currently use, which is one of them I'm actually looking at, uses that as well.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any reason we can't say the name. I mean, nobody's paying us money for this anyway.
That's true.
So I'm using SentinelOne, and so the thing that, like you described, the heuristic scanning, that's the big thing. That's the watching the behavior of the computer and seeing what it's doing. So yesterday, I was trying to install Acronis Disk Director 12. Because I needed to create a boot disk so that I could check some hard drives. I wanted to make some partition table changes, just like I would want to do if I were writing a virus.
Exactly.
But so I was trying to build this boot disk, and I was trying to run Windows PE, which is what's PE stand for? Pre-boot environment.
Exactly. It's like pre-environment. Yeah.
Pre-environment. So I was trying to build this disk, and what I was doing is legitimate work, but it's very much like a virus would do for creating a boot disk to encrypt my computer. So my software stopped it. So I was disappointed. I mean, I was pleased and disappointed at the same time. I was like, guys, thank you, but I need to do this, and this is a legitimate source of action, but
Yeah.
it detected the behavior that my computer was doing,
Mhm.
not looking for specific.
Mhm.
It does look for
Mhm.
specific file, identifiers
Mhm.
as known viruses, but nothing that I was doing was a virus thing, but
Mhm.
it looked like a virus thing.
I,
So,
I, I actually had that happen to one of my techs just the other day. I have a practice administrator who's retiring, and her replacement needs to use the web design software that the former person was using, and they're both working at the same time. But we were migrating it from one to the other, and one of the features within it is you double click on an icon, and it brings up a sync utility, and the username and password is there, but the password's all asterisked out. So it's been so many years, no one's kept track of the password.
yeah.
So I said, well, the easiest way to do it is I gave them a hack utility. Yes, they're downloadable to see what's behind the asterisks.
Uh-huh.
They're common utilities.
Hmm.
And so they put their USB drive in, double clicked on it, and then moved it over, and then all of a sudden the antivirus pops up,
Killed
hacking
your tool.
utility, and it killed the tool, removed it from the USB device, and they had to come back to the office to get another copy, and then
Hmm.
disable the antivirus
Yeah.
during that time. So just like you, it did its job,
Hmm.
and looked for hacking like utility, hacking like function.
That's why you put all your hack tools on a burned CD so it can't rip it off.
Thanks for the advice for everyone out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone, if you're going to hack, be sure to put it on a read-only device.
There you go. Perfect.
It'll still
Okay.
stop it, but it just won't delete it.
Yeah.
So what's something else that people can do for protection?
The next biggest thing for
Mhm.
me is web filtering, web content filtering.
Mhm.
So setting up filtering on the computer
Mhm.
so that users can go to websites that are known, good, safe sites.
Mhm.
Blocking all of the sites that are unknown, categorized as bad sites, whether it's
Mhm.
file sharing or wares or hacking or
Mhm.
a lot of those places get, if you can keep your computer from going to those
Mhm.
bad places,
Yeah.
you can prevent a lot of it by just simply, will you get robbed if you don't walk down a dark alley at night with money hanging out of your pocket? you know if you don't do those things, you've reduced your risk of mugging. So that's exactly what the
Exactly.
web filtering does, is it reduces your risk of going to a place that you don't want. And they're not perfect either.
Mhm.
The most common problem I have with my customers in web filtering
Mhm.
is they'll have been working for months and didn't even
Mhm.
know they had web filtering turned on, and come across a site that when you look at it, you're like, well, it kind of looks shady to me.
Yeah.
you know, after
Mhm.
I whitelist it, they're like, well, we want you to turn that off. I'm like, no, 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 don't turn it off.
Yeah.
We're talking about one site. Well, I don't want to have to call you every time. I was like, it was 30 minutes. If your computer gets a virus, it's going to cost you way more than 30 minutes.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So, and now, as we're both managed service providers. We provide a security suite to all of our customers for all of their computers as part of our service. Do you include the content filtering as part of your normal service for customers?
It is. It is
Hmm.
in my list of tools, and unless
Hmm.
there's like a legitimate reason, we actually don't give our clients an option to not
Hmm.
have it,
Yeah.
uh, because it protects them, and it makes my job easier because they get
Hmm.
less viruses that way.
So they'll not only get Sentinel-1, but they'll also get the web filtering, kind of like with us. We use
Hmm.
WebRoot right now as our heuristic scanner. We also have usually a copy of Malwarebytes on there as well, the commercial edition, and we use the OpenDNS umbrella that was just purchased by Citrix for our filtering. And
Yeah.
sometimes we'll use actually some of the firewall software to additionally filter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, as many places as you can, but
Mhm.
we stick primarily with the web filtering, well, like OpenDNS, where you can install it locally on the
Mhm.
computer.
Mhm.
We want the web filtering content on the computer, not just
Yes.
in the firewall. So if somebody takes their laptop home,
Mhm.
people don't take their PCs home very often, but if
But they,
they did,
yep, they do take their laptops, and I hate to say it, Android tablets, same thing. I mean,
hmm
tablets, Android tablets and phones are at risk as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about good backups?
Well, that is my pet peeve, and it's one of the main things that I still maintain at my company,
Hmm.
as far as doing technical work.
Hmm.
The backups are it. I mean, that's your last defense at this point. Everything we've talked about is trying to keep the data at the front end safe during use, and when it all fails, and when it gets through, and if a file is encrypted, if you've
Hmm.
got solid backups, if you've got uh,
Hmm.
a shadow copy backup,
Hmm.
if you've got a local backup that's not accessible via the network during normal times, and if it gets through to that, you've got your offsite business disaster recovery backup
Yes.
held at, like, well, my clients, my backups, my disaster recovery backups are actually held in my office. So in the event that they had a failure, I just burn it to, I put it on a disk or I put it on a server, and I come to their office with it. We don't wait for
Hmm.
downloading it from the cloud or
Hmm.
whatever. And there are lots of ways that can be done in the cloud. You could spin it, you could be dumping it in Amazon
Yes.
and then spin up an Amazon web server and immediately pull that blob of data. Well, that blob is Azure's storage, whatever
Yeah.
whatever Amazon calls their big chunk of data.
Big chunk of data, exactly.
Attach that to a virtual server and attach it to the network, and
Hmm.
they've got their network back up and running.
Exactly.
So, and it's not just one backup. I don't just have one
No.
backup.
Hmm.
I've got three.
Yeah.
Well, four if you consider the live data. But I mean,
Yeah.
you got your
Yeah.
shadow protect or
Hmm.
shadow copies running right there with
Hmm.
versioning. You've got your on-site backup. You got your off-site backup, and you can even do an annual cold storage backup.
Yeah, and that's somewhat like what we do. We've got the shadow copy, we've got the local backup, we've got the backup to our data center, and then we also stream one to an offsite source. It's not Amazon. We use something called Backblaze B2 for their business
hmm
environment, and we send it there, and that's kind of our very, very last line of defense. And what they'll do is they would, if something would happen, locally, like there'd be a local disaster, then we would be able to take, and they would send us a whatever size drive they'd overnight to us with all the data on it.
hmm
So, and each stage of the way, I have to say, I have to put out here right now, we do as well as you do. It's encrypted.
Yeah. And you're a HIPAA
Yeah.
compliant company, and we
Yep.
are as well.
Hmm.
It's encrypted when it's in stasis, in transit, and stasis again.
Yep.
Um, so, and the other thing that you mentioned when you talked about your your problem 15 years ago about the
Hmm.
backups not actually being tested,
Yes.
well, one, we get an alert every night giving us the status of our backups.
Hmm.
So we're looking for successes every night. So every night we
Hmm.
know each server was successfully backed up. And then
Yes.
monthly, we actually fire up every single server as a virtual machine.
Hmm.
There are tools that you can automatically do that.
Hmm.
There's ways that you can script it. And there's just as many ways as that can fail.
Exactly. And we do the same thing. It is a manual process,
hmm
and I don't trust that. I trust the daily emails. I trust the integrity checks, but I do not entrust the actual recovery of a system on a routine basis as a test of the data store to anything but manual.
hmm Well, and I've had, I mean, and
Hmm.
this is a software configuration problem
Hmm.
or whatever, but
Yeah.
I've been able to back up servers and I could restore their data, but I couldn't restore them as a server.
Hmm.
That particular part failed,
Hmm.
and that was really a server configuration that had to be resolved. But there's no way that I would have known that if I didn't test it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or if I only tested a file, because I could successfully restore the files, but I couldn't restore the server.
You couldn't restore the server itself. Yes.
And that's 8 hours of work right there.
Yep, exactly.
8 hours of downtime.
And 8 hours of downtime. And that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing. I mean, if you look on your return on investment for a company, if they've got 30 employees, how much of those, what is a day of their payroll, much less a day of not earning income because they're not seeing patients, they're not able to see clients, they're not able to, I don't care, I have a cabinet maker that just signed up with us, not able to produce the inventory for that day.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
Mhm.
What about employee education? I find that more and more that teaching the employees how to use the tools that are there, that's something that's really lacking in this area.
Yeah. I mean, computers would be perfect if it weren't for users. I mean,
Yeah.
but I would say that it's probably, this falls under front end protection. That a lot of these attacks are dependent upon a user doing something that could compromise the system.
Yep.
Them wanting to review we had a client this week that called in. They said, we've got this file and it's from a source and we can't read it, and it's an invoice and I need to read it. Well, we got on their computer and said, oh, this is a fake. Look here. Look at this address. It's not right. Look at this file. This is not right. We explained to them, look at these things, and the user said, but I need to see what's in the file. No,
Exactly.
you
No,
don't.
you don't.
File. If you open what's in the file, well, no, it says it's
an invoice, or it says it's a UPS shipment.
Yeah. So,
but am I supposed to go to the UPS office, or how am I supposed to pay the invoice?
Yeah, how can I pay this? And that's the thing is the educating the users to one, be a little skeptical. Don't be so. I mean, you get both pendulum swings. You get somebody that'll open anything, and then you get somebody who's so scared that they're like, I don't know if I can open this. I'm like, well, yeah, that's from your client. They're it's a picture of their grandchild. But if they don't understand how to look at attachments and see what kind of file it is, hover over a link before clicking it to see, that link says Microsoft.com, and when I click over it, it says get viruses here real fast.com.
Now, should I be clicking on that one?
Well, if you want to get a virus real fast,
then yes, exactly.
Then click away, my friend.
So yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've gone to is that we do quarterly business reviews with our customers and things like that, but we twice a year with every customer try to attend a monthly staff meeting twice a year, or set up our own luncheon that I don't care. We'll bring in lunch for the staff. We'll do whatever it takes to get them to sit down in a room for us to just briefly go over, okay, here's some examples of email phishing, and here are the results if you don't watch closely and be vigilant. Because I like to think of it that the person behind the mouse is the first line of defense. I don't care what antivirus software, like you said, a person can get a virus even if they have antivirus, anti-malware, content filtering, all this stuff, because of the thousands and thousands that are produced every single day, much less every single hour sometimes.
Yeah, well, we do I think like you described, the in-person training is good, and there are also online services where you can send your employees through training. I've had a really hard time getting people to take the training.
Exactly, and that's the reason we've gone to in-person. We've
Mm-hmm.
gone to in person only for that reason, because we're there anyway, doing like for our medical customers, doing every 6 month security audit to make sure that everything is meeting HIPAA and meaningful use compliance. So we just kind of dovetail it with
Mm-hmm.
that, and so and with our other customers, a lot of it PCI compliance and stuff like that. We try to dovetail these things. But we've gone to in person because I couldn't get people to send their employees online. I mean, they just don't see the need and the necessity for it.
Yeah.
They see the need and necessity, I hate to say it, for us to bring chicken nuggets, but not but not for that. And I totally understand it. Don't get me wrong. I totally understand there's other things going on, that they've got going on, but they have to start seeing the need for things like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I do think it's a good idea, though. That's
Yeah.
probably a better solution, is getting right in front of their face and reminding them, and
Yeah.
making them take a test right afterwards.
Ooh, ouch, ouch, ouch.
What? I was just here for the nuggets. I didn't want to learn something.
Yeah, exactly. No, but in reality, I've found that for us, for our environment here, it's been that, and it's really, really difficult to get people online to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So. What about I've got at least a lot of doctors and attorneys who work at home, and they're dialing into their networks there. I mean, obviously, I recommend a really good antivirus, anti-malware at their offices. We keep up with their Windows updates. At their home, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I provide little cheat sheets and things like that. But other than updates, making sure that updates are happening, and antivirus, what do you think?
Well, primarily, if it's for a business use and if it's for remote access, we typically try to get the doctors are most likely the ones that want to get in. They need to get in and view the EMR, or the dentists want to get into their dental system.
Yeah.
We strongly recommend that they have a business computer, or if they are going to be the owner of the computer, that they dedicate this to. Uh-oh. Can you still hear me fine?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay. But we recommend that they have a dedicated computer for the remote access to keeping it safe.
Mm-hmm.
However, if that's not the case and they've got to use their own personal equipment, I want them to run antivirus. I want them to run, if they can. And it's not that, and actually it's free. OpenDNS is free for the home user and personal users. So
yeah, exactly.
they should sign up for an OpenDNS account. They should have good antivirus, and they should be buying backup software anyway. It's I mean, if you go with Acronis, I think it's either 59 or 79. It's a one-time fee.
Yeah, it is, and you get like a year of offsite storage.
Yeah, so you can have your storage with them. If you don't want to pay for that, you can buy a USB key or a USB drive for $100, and so for $180, you can protect your home computer.
Yeah. And the thing is that you can do the restore yourself should there be a problem, or you can take that disk and the computer, bring it into your office. Usually your MSP will work with you on it, or to pretty much anybody, and they can do the restore for you. I mean, it's not that you have to think, oh my goodness, if I do this, how am I ever going to restore? It's just not worth it. Well, to me, what's not worth it is not being able to access the pictures of your child from 10 years before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had people that have lost that from a home environment because they haven't done backups.
Yeah. Well, and I would encourage users. People think that they're not smart enough to learn computers, and that's just not true, because the tools are. It can be daunting at times, but it's not rocket science. If you can read, you can back up your computer and you can restore your computer.
Exactly.
you can read the
Hmm.
pop-up that shows up
Yeah.
on your screen.
I recommend for people a utility called Backblaze,
Hmm.
which I started using it on my Mac at home years and years and years ago, and just like a lot of the other things out there, it doesn't create an image like a Cronus of your data, so you can't image it back. But what it does is it picks the files for you.
Hmm.
It doesn't back up word.exe, and it doesn't back up Windows. So if you had a complete system failure, you'd have to have someone reinstall your environment and then just click a button and it would replace the files back where they were. It looks for pictures, it looks for documents, it looks for PowerPoint presentations, it looks for those cute cat videos that you decide to download. but but that's and there are really two ways of going about it, is that. But again, it's, I don't want to say it's idiot proof, but people have to look at the fact that it really is something that someone with not a lot of knowledge, computer knowledge, can still either have it available or at least have it, at least be able to potentially do some restore themselves.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Mac. I mean, Mac's got the Time Machine, and
Hmm.
that is by far the simplest backup, and it's
Ever.
included with the
Hmm.
operating system.
Exactly.
If there is not a Time Machine backup scheduled on your computer and you attach a USB storage device, your
It'll
Mac
actually
says,
ask you.
"Yeah, hey, bro, I see you put a big bunch of storage on me. I'd like to back it up there. Can I?"
Exactly, exactly. Well, I think the phrase is a little different than
It's 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 not that. Oh,
no,
what's
it's
yeah.
it's close. Steve Jobs almost said
Yeah,
that.
he didn't say, "Hey, bro,
No, no, no.
you're
But
from
it's
California."
exactly. Plus, it didn't have the little. Anyway, but yes, I agree. I agree. But I believe in having something on site and something off site.
Hmm.
Um, so so that's got to be that's got to be something to think about. But and again, we're talking about a personal here.
Yeah.
Business, you've got to have at least your servers. You've got to have file sync utilities for secure syncing, things like that. I mean, this
Hmm.
is this is all something for businesses that a managed service provider needs to be helping you with, not a brother's, sister's, uncle's, cousin twice removed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've got a client that
Hmm.
that they went the full Monty. He
Hmm.
said, "I want every single computer here backed up."
Wow.
And I was like, "Dude, that's awesome." I said, "Really, that's kind of overkill.
Hmm.
I'm backing up your server. Let's set up the computers to make sure all their data's on the
All
server,
the
and I'll
data
just back up."
points there. Yeah.
He's like, "No, because every time a workstation goes down, it costs me all that time to get that computer back up. And if I had an image backup of that computer, it would shorten that." I'm like, "Man, I love you."
Did you throw a bra in there somewhere?
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
you're my favorite client ever.
Well, people a lot of times, and that's something really to bring up here, is that with things like ransomware, they don't look at the initial cost and say the cost of recovery is so great.
Hmm.
People have insurance policies now. I've got a lot of my medical offices talking about cyber insurance policies and things like that. They don't think a thing of paying tens of thousands of dollars for things that are insurances for the building, insurances for the other. I had one person who they're just in a remodel phase, and they're remodeling. They have a server closet because they're not very big, that just has a rack, and
Yeah.
they had open doors in it and stuff like that, and now they're enclosing it. And I said, well, you've got to have air conditioning. And he said, man, Tim, that's going to cost me $8,000. I said, okay, but you have $230,000 worth of equipment here. And he looked at me and he said, okay.
Yeah.
Because he saw the ratio, because not only was it the almost $250,000 worth of different file servers, they had their security system, they had their they had multiple other systems in there as well, but
Mm-hmm.
they also, in addition to that, would have to deal with the resetting everything like that up.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing for backups. It's the same thing for all that. And people really have to understand that. So nowadays, the cost of doing business, it no longer is something you can think about. It's something that has to be acted on.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yep. It's all an insurance policy.
exactly. So what do you want to finish up on?
I guess we should. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. What do you want
kind
to
of ended on
stress?
good
Yeah.
advice.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
the
Okay.
the advice of education and
Hmm.
backups would be the most important thing.
Because pretty much everyone has antivirus.
Everyone has antivirus.
Yeah.
Everybody's, well, not all antivirus providers are equal,
Hmm.
and I don't want to fight that fight. I'd rather
Nope.
fight the fight of getting
Hmm.
good backups in place
Yep.
and teaching people how to keep their computer safe.
Hmm. Exactly. And I think that's good advice for business, and the backups are definitely good advice for home users.
Hmm.
Okay,
I agree.
sounds great. Thanks everyone for